Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is how ancient Romans really beat boredom. You get comfortable. Take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. How ancient Romans really beat boredom. Imagine the last golden light of the afternoon slowly fading over the rooftops of ancient Rome. The warmth of the sun still lingers on the pale stone streets, but the air has begun to cool. Somewhere nearby, a fountain quietly pours fresh water into a marble basin. A few pigeons flutter from one rooftop to another, while the gentle sound of sandals brushing against worn paving stones echoes through the narrow streets. Tonight, rather than following the stories of emperors or great battles, you are invited to spend time with ordinary Romans. These are the people who filled the markets, greeted their neighbors, shared meals with their families, and searched for small moments of happiness in a world that often demanded hard work. Like us, they sometimes found themselves with unexpected hours to fill. They became tired, curious, restless, or simply wished for pleasant company before the day came to an end. So settle into a comfortable place, let your thoughts drift gently, and imagine that you have quietly stepped back nearly 2,000 years. You find yourself standing beside a broad street lined with homes, workshops, and small shops. The city is alive, but not hurried. A baker slides the last loaves from his oven, filling the air with the comforting scent of warm bread. A fruit seller carefully gathers baskets of figs and grapes before darkness arrives. Children laugh as they chase one another around a public fountain, while older citizens pause to exchange stories about the day's events. One of the greatest surprises about Roman life is that boredom was not considered unusual. Even in one of history's greatest cities, there were long afternoons, quiet evenings, and ordinary days when nothing remarkable happened. The Romans understood this well, and over many centuries they developed countless ways to make those peaceful hours more enjoyable. Unlike modern people, they had no screens glowing in front of them, and no music streaming from invisible devices. Entertainment had to be created by people themselves, by conversation, by movement, by games, and by shared experiences. Imagine walking toward the neighborhood baths, not the enormous imperial complexes that visitors often admire today, but a modest local bathhouse used by ordinary citizens. Warm steam slips through an open doorway, carrying with it the faint smell of olive oil and damp stone. Many modern people imagine Roman baths as places where everyone simply washed themselves. In reality, bathing was only part of the experience. For countless Romans, the baths became the center of daily social life. Friends arranged to meet there almost every afternoon. Merchants discussed business while relaxing in warm pools. Teachers debated ideas with students. Travelers exchanged stories from distant provinces. Someone might hear the latest political rumors, while another person simply enjoyed sitting quietly beside warm water after a tiring day. Picture yourself stepping carefully across smooth mosaic floors, polished by generations of visitors. The walls glow softly beneath the light of oil lamps. Voices bounce gently from stone ceilings, creating a constant background murmur that feels almost comforting. Some visitors exercise before entering the baths. Others stretch tired muscles after carrying heavy goods through the city. A few elderly Romans simply sit together, enjoying conversation that may continue for hours. Nobody appears to be in a hurry. In many ways, the baths served the same purpose as cafes, parks, community centers, and gyms all at once. They were places where loneliness became less common. As evening slowly approaches, fresh towels are folded, fragrant oils are rubbed onto clean skin, and people leave feeling refreshed, not only because they have bathed, but because they have shared time with others. Now imagine following two friends as they leave the bathhouse together. Instead of returning home immediately, they wander through nearby streets without any urgent destination. Walking itself was one of Rome's quiet pleasures. The city offered endless opportunities to observe everyday life. Craftsmen carved marble with careful hands. Metalworkers shaped bronze into household objects. Potters displayed rows of freshly fired bowls and cups. Street musicians occasionally filled the air with gentle melodies played on simple instruments. Romans often enjoyed watching skilled workers almost as much as purchasing the finished products. You pause beside a sculptor patiently smoothing the face of a marble statue. Fine white dust settles gently onto the ground. Curious neighbors gather nearby, offering opinions that the sculptor politely ignores while continuing his careful work. Further along the street, a storyteller has attracted a small audience. His hands move slowly as he speaks of legendary heroes, distant voyages, and strange animals said to live beyond the edges of the known world. Not everyone believes every tale. That hardly matters. The pleasure comes from listening together beneath the fading afternoon sky. As the evening breeze begins to cool the city, families slowly return toward their homes. Doors remain open to welcome fresh air. The smell of lentil stew, roasted vegetables, herbs, and fresh bread drifts through narrow streets. Dinner is rarely rushed. For wealthy Romans, meals can become long social occasions filled with conversation and music. For ordinary families, supper is usually simpler, yet no less meaningful. Parents ask children about their day. Grandparents recall memories from years gone by. Neighbors occasionally stop to share news or exchange small gifts of food. Conversation becomes one of Rome's greatest cures for boredom. Without constant distractions, people become remarkably skilled listeners. Imagine sitting quietly beside a small oil lamp as an elderly relative begins telling stories about the days of his youth. Perhaps he remembers serving in the army many decades earlier. Perhaps he recalls surviving a difficult winter or witnessing the dedication of a new public building. Children listen with wide eyes. Adults smile as familiar stories return once again. Nobody complains about hearing them another time. These repeated stories become part of family memory, passing gently from one generation to the next. Outside, darkness slowly settles across the city. The stars begin appearing above tiled rooftops. Dogs bark somewhere in the distance before growing quiet again. A donkey's footsteps echo briefly along the street. Then even those sounds begin to fade. For many Romans, evenings are not filled with endless activity. Instead, they welcome stillness. Some sit outside their homes, enjoying cooler air after the heat of the day. Others quietly repair clothing, weave baskets, carve small wooden objects, or prepare tools needed for tomorrow's work. Small tasks keep busy hands peaceful, while gentle conversation continues. You find yourself noticing something unexpected. The Romans do not seem afraid of quiet moments. They understand that not every hour must be exciting. Sometimes satisfaction comes simply from sharing space with family while the city slowly settles into sleep. Perhaps this simple lesson explains why boredom rarely lasted very long. Tomorrow, as the morning slowly arrives over the hills surrounding Rome, another ordinary day will begin, bringing fresh opportunities for games, festivals, friendships, and countless small pleasures that helped ancient Romans quietly fill the passing hours. As the first pale light of morning slowly reaches the rooftops of Rome, the city awakens with remarkable gentleness. The night's cool air still lingers between the stone buildings, and the streets are quieter than they will be a few hours from now. A rooster calls from a nearby courtyard. Somewhere in the distance, the steady splash of water echoes from a public fountain that has flowed through the night. Imagine opening a simple wooden door and stepping outside before the crowds begin to gather. The paving stones beneath your sandals still hold the freshness of the night. Shopkeepers have only just begun lifting their shutters. Bakers are already awake, tending glowing ovens that have been warm since before dawn. The comforting scent of fresh bread drifts softly through the neighborhood, inviting early customers to begin their day. You find yourself walking without any particular destination. For many Romans, this was a pleasure in itself. There was no expectation that every moment needed a purpose. A peaceful stroll through familiar streets allowed people to notice the changing rhythm of their city. As the morning slowly arrives, neighbors greet one another with quiet familiarity. A woman carries a basket of vegetables from yesterday's market. An elderly man pauses to stroke a friendly dog that seems to know everyone on the street. Two young apprentices hurry toward a workshop, laughing softly about something that happened the evening before. These ordinary moments rarely appear in grand histories, yet they formed the greater part of Roman life. One of the simplest ways Romans escaped boredom was through conversation. Not formal speeches or heated debates, but the gentle exchange of everyday thoughts. News traveled from neighbor to neighbor long before it reached official announcements. Someone had heard that a merchant ship had safely arrived from Egypt. Another claimed that excellent olives had appeared in the market that morning. Others wondered whether a popular actor would soon perform again at the theater. Nobody seemed troubled if these conversations wandered from one subject to another. In fact, wandering thoughts were welcomed. Picture yourself stopping beside a small fountain where several citizens have gathered to collect water. Clay jars rest on the ground while people patiently wait their turn. No one stands silently. Stories begin almost naturally. An older woman remembers a festival from many years ago when musicians played until long after sunset. A young father proudly tells everyone that his little daughter has learned her first letters. A gardener quietly shares advice about keeping herbs healthy during the hottest weeks of summer. Time passes almost unnoticed. Perhaps this is one reason the Romans did not always fear boredom. They had learned that even ordinary conversation could make an hour feel pleasantly full. As the city grows busier, merchants begin arranging colorful displays outside their shops. Bright fabrics hang from wooden beams. Pottery catches the morning sunlight. Fresh fish arrives packed in damp seaweed after traveling from nearby coastal towns. Baskets overflow with apples, pears, figs, onions, beans, and fragrant herbs. The marketplace was much more than a place to buy food. Imagine slowly wandering between the stalls without feeling rushed. Vendors call out politely, hoping to attract customers. Friends unexpectedly meet one another and decide to walk together for a while. Children stare curiously at unusual objects brought from distant provinces of the empire. A traveler displays smooth glass made in the eastern Mediterranean. Another merchant offers carefully carved ivory combs. Nearby, someone demonstrates a clever mechanical toy designed to amuse children. Even those with little money often visited the market simply to observe. Watching people became entertainment. Romans were excellent observers of human nature. They noticed expressions, clothing, accents, and gestures. A visitor from Britain dressed differently from someone arriving from Syria. An Egyptian sailor carried himself differently from a farmer visiting the capital for the first time. The empire stretched across vast distances, bringing countless cultures into one remarkable city. Simply sitting in the forum and quietly observing the flow of people could occupy an entire afternoon. Imagine finding a comfortable place beneath the shade of a column. The stone remains pleasantly cool, despite the warming day. Before you passes an endless procession of humanity. A senator walks confidently with several attendants behind him. A soldier home on leave smiles as he spots an old friend. A woman carefully balances a basket filled with freshly washed linen. Children weave effortlessly through the crowd, disappearing and reappearing like playful birds. Street dogs nap peacefully wherever patches of sunlight reach the ground. Nothing dramatic happens, yet nothing feels dull. Every passing face hints at another story. You find yourself wondering where each person has been and where they will go next. The Romans loved this quiet form of curiosity. Occasionally, a public speaker steps forward, hoping to gather listeners. Some discuss politics. Others explain philosophical ideas. A few simply enjoy hearing themselves speak. Not everyone stops to listen. Many continue walking, smiling politely as they pass. Those who remain often ask thoughtful questions, creating conversations that sometimes last much longer than the speech itself. For educated Romans, discussing ideas became one of life's greatest pleasures. Philosophy was not reserved only for famous thinkers. Ordinary citizens often reflected on simple questions. What makes a good neighbor? Why does happiness seem easier to find on some days than others? How should a person remain calm during difficult times? These quiet discussions helped fill long afternoons with gentle reflection rather than restless boredom. Picture yourself listening from the edge of the gathering. Warm sunlight reaches the tops of nearby columns, while cool shadows stretch across the pavement. A breeze carries the faint scent of crushed rosemary from a nearby food stall. The speaker finishes. Instead of applause, the listeners simply continue talking among themselves. One conversation becomes two. Two become five. Soon the square is filled with friendly voices exchanging ideas. As the day continues, many Romans choose to visit small workshops, where skilled craftsmen patiently create everyday objects. There is something deeply satisfying about watching experienced hands at work. A leather worker carefully cuts thick hides into sturdy sandals. A jeweler polishes a tiny silver ring until it reflects the afternoon light. A basket maker patiently weaves willow branches together, one strand crossing another in an almost hypnotic rhythm. The work is slow, unhurried, almost peaceful. Visitors often stand quietly for several minutes, appreciating the patience behind each object. In a world without constant entertainment, craftsmanship itself became fascinating to watch. Imagine the gentle tapping of a hammer against bronze, the soft scrape of a carving knife across wood, the rhythmic turning of a potter's wheel. These ordinary sounds blended together into the quiet music of daily Roman life. As afternoon gradually begins to soften, the pace of the city changes once again. The brightest heat encourages many people to seek shade beneath covered walkways or leafy gardens. Some simply sit. Others read aloud from handwritten scrolls. Friends continue conversations begun earlier in the morning. Children invent games with little more than pebbles and imagination. Nobody seems anxious to fill every moment with excitement. Instead, they allow the hours to unfold naturally, finding comfort in familiar routines and pleasant company. As the sunlight slowly becomes golden once more, you realize that much of Rome's answer to boredom was surprisingly simple. People remained connected to one another. They walked together, worked together, shared stories together, observed the world together. In doing so, even the quietest day carried its own gentle rewards. And as evening begins its slow return to the ancient city, another familiar pastime is waiting just around the corner, one that brought laughter, friendly rivalry, and countless hours of quiet enjoyment to Romans of every age. Imagine the sun sinking a little lower over the tiled roofs of Rome, its warm light turning the marble buildings a gentle shade of gold. The busiest hours of work are now beginning to fade. Shopkeepers brush dust from their hands. Craftsmen place their tools carefully aside, and families know that, before long, they will gather for the evening meal. Yet for many Romans, the day is far from over. You find yourself following a narrow street that opens into a small square. It is not one of the grand spaces described by historians. Instead, it belongs to the neighborhood itself, where familiar faces appear almost every day. Children run across the open ground, their laughter echoing softly between the surrounding buildings. Older citizens rest on stone benches, content to watch the younger generation at play. There is a peaceful feeling here, one that seems untouched by the concerns of politics or distant military campaigns. Imagine sitting quietly beneath the shade of a fig tree. A light breeze carries the scent of fresh herbs from a nearby kitchen. Somewhere, a dove coos gently from a rooftop. The city continues to breathe around you, never silent, yet never overwhelming. One of the favorite ways Romans passed the time was through games. These were not merely children's amusements. Men and women, young and old, rich and poor, all enjoyed games whenever the opportunity arose. Some games required careful thinking, while others depended entirely on chance. A few could become quite competitive, though many were simply excuses to spend pleasant hours with friends. Picture yourself watching two neighbors place a small wooden board across their knees. Smooth stones and polished glass pieces rest neatly beside it. One player smiles quietly before making the first move. The game begins. No one rushes. Each decision is made with patience. The spectators lean forward just enough to follow the unfolding contest, occasionally offering advice that neither player seems eager to accept. The Romans played several board games, many of which have been discovered by archaeologists carved into stone benches, temple steps, and public buildings. Some people carried small folding boards wherever they traveled, allowing a game to begin almost anywhere. Imagine how comforting that must have been during a long journey. A traveler arrives at an inn after walking many miles. Before supper is served, another guest notices the board tucked inside his bag. Would you care for a game? The invitation is simple. Within moments, strangers become companions. Hours pass almost unnoticed. The game itself matters, but so does the conversation that grows around it. Sometimes stories are exchanged between turns. Someone recalls a fishing trip along the coast. Another remembers the vineyards of southern Italy. A retired soldier quietly describes the distant mountains he once crossed many years before. The board becomes only one part of the evening. It is friendship that truly fills the hours. You find yourself noticing that Roman games often encouraged patience rather than speed. Players observed one another carefully, thinking several moves ahead. There was satisfaction in quiet concentration. The sounds surrounding them blended gently into the background. The crackling of nearby cooking fires, the distant splash of water from a fountain, the occasional clip-clop of a horse passing through the street. Life continued peacefully around the players. Not every game required a board. Children found endless amusement with objects that modern people might overlook. Imagine a group of boys collecting small knuckle bones from sheep or goats. Carefully cleaned and polished, these tiny bones became pieces for games that tested skill, luck, and coordination. With practiced hands, they tossed them into the air, catching them in different patterns before they fell. Nearby, a little girl draws simple shapes into the dusty ground with a stick. Soon, several friends join her, inventing rules as they play. No expensive toys are needed. Their imagination provides everything else. Parents watch from nearby doorways, smiling quietly as the children lose themselves in play. Even after thousands of years, the sounds of children laughing remain wonderfully familiar. As the evening grows cooler, another form of entertainment begins to appear. Music. Imagine hearing the gentle notes of a reed flute drifting through the streets. A musician sits outside a modest tavern, playing without any grand audience. The melody is calm and unhurried, rising softly above the conversations of those nearby. Romans encountered music in many parts of daily life. Festivals included musicians. Religious ceremonies often featured songs. Family celebrations welcomed instruments. Even ordinary evenings could be brightened by someone willing to play a favorite tune. You pause beside the musician for a few moments. Several listeners have gathered. No one speaks loudly. The music asks for nothing except quiet attention. A small child begins swaying gently with the rhythm, while an elderly couple exchange knowing smiles, perhaps remembering melodies they first heard decades earlier. The performance ends. There is no thunderous applause, only warm thanks and quiet appreciation. The musician nods politely before beginning another gentle tune. Picture yourself continuing your evening walk through streets, now lit by rows of flickering oil lamps. Their soft glow reflects from polished stone, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow. The city feels smaller now, more intimate. Families have gathered indoors. Laughter drifts through open windows. The rich aroma of vegetable stew, fresh bread, olives, garlic, and herbs fills the cooling air. A cat slips silently across the street, disappearing beneath a cart. Somewhere above, stars begin appearing, one by one. Romans often enjoyed simply sitting outside their homes after supper. The heat of the day had passed. Neighbors carried stools into the street, where conversations resumed beneath the evening sky. Imagine joining one such gathering. An elderly grandmother mends a woolen cloak while speaking softly to her grandchildren. A father carefully sharpens a farming tool that will be needed tomorrow. A young woman continues spinning wool into thread with steady, practiced hands. Work and relaxation exist together without feeling separate. Hands remain busy. Minds remain peaceful. Stories continue flowing from one neighbor to another. Someone recalls seeing dolphins while traveling by ship. Another wonders whether this year's olive harvest will be especially good. A traveler describes snowy mountains so high that they seem impossible to believe. Children listen carefully, asking questions that make the adults laugh kindly. These evenings create memories far more lasting than any grand spectacle. You find yourself realizing that much of Roman happiness came from ordinary companionship. Their entertainment rarely depended upon extraordinary events. Instead, it grew naturally from familiar routines shared with people they trusted. As darkness settles completely across the city, the voices gradually become quieter. One family says goodnight. Then another. Doors close gently. Oil lamps are trimmed before sleep. The streets slowly empty until only an occasional passerby can be heard walking home beneath the stars. The city, so lively only a few hours earlier, now rests peacefully beneath the night sky. Tomorrow will bring another ordinary day, filled with new conversations, familiar faces, and yet another pastime that helped Romans gently chase away boredom, one that invited them beyond the city walls and into the quiet beauty of the surrounding countryside. Imagine the first rays of sunlight reaching beyond the eastern hills, painting the countryside outside Rome with a soft glow. The city is beginning to wake once more, but today you choose a quieter path. Instead of following the busy streets toward the Forum, you walk through one of the great gates and leave the crowded neighborhoods behind. Almost at once, the sounds begin to change. The steady murmur of thousands of voices fades into the distance. In its place comes the cheerful song of birds hidden among olive trees. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves of cypress and pine. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd calls softly to his flock as sheep wander across dew-covered grass. Picture yourself taking a slow breath of the cool morning air. It carries the fresh scent of damp earth mixed with wild herbs growing beside the road. The world feels wonderfully calm. Many people imagine ancient Romans spending nearly all of their lives inside busy cities. Yet whenever they could, countless Romans escaped into the countryside, even if only for a few hours. The quiet hills surrounding Rome offered something that the crowded streets could not. They offered peace. For wealthy families, country villas became places of rest where they could leave behind the noise of politics and business. But even ordinary citizens enjoyed walking beyond the city whenever work allowed. Public holidays, religious festivals, or simply a free afternoon gave people the chance to stretch their legs beneath open skies. You find yourself walking along a road that has carried travelers for generations. The stones beneath your feet are worn smooth by carts, horses, soldiers, merchants, and families returning home. Small wildflowers grow along the edges, their colors bright beneath the gentle sunshine. An elderly farmer greets you with a warm smile before returning to his vineyard. His hands move patiently among the vines, checking each cluster of grapes with quiet care. Nearby, another family gathers ripe figs into woven baskets. Their work is steady, never hurried. Imagine pausing beside a small stream flowing beneath a simple stone bridge. Clear water slips quietly over smooth rocks, reflecting patches of sunlight dancing between the branches above. Dragonflies hover just above the surface, while tiny fish dart through the shallows. For a Roman seeking relief from boredom, moments like these required no special occasion. Nature itself became entertainment. People watched birds building nests. They listened to frogs calling from ponds. They admired changing seasons as vineyards slowly turned from green to gold. Without modern distractions, even the smallest details became worthy of attention. Picture yourself sitting beneath the broad shade of an olive tree. Its twisted trunk speaks of many long years, perhaps even centuries. The leaves shimmer softly whenever the wind passes through them, creating a quiet silver-green glow beneath the morning light. A family arrives carrying a simple meal. Fresh bread, cheese, olives, a handful of grapes. Nothing elaborate. Yet they spread a cloth upon the grass as though preparing for a great celebration. Children chase butterflies while their parents unpack the food. An older grandfather leans comfortably against the tree, smiling as he watches the younger generation explore the nearby meadow. The meal itself passes slowly. There is no need to rush. Conversation flows naturally between bites of bread and fruit. Someone points toward distant hills, where smoke rises gently from another village. Another family member remembers visiting that place many years earlier. Simple memories become treasured stories. You notice something that would have seemed perfectly ordinary to a Roman. Nobody is searching for constant excitement. Instead, they are fully present in this peaceful morning. The breeze, the sunlight, the bird song, the laughter of children. Together, these ordinary moments create quiet happiness. As the morning slowly arrives in full, you continue walking through fields where farmers tend their crops with remarkable patience. Wheat sways gently like waves upon a golden sea. Oxen pull wooden plows across rich soil, while swallows dart gracefully overhead in search of insects. Agriculture shaped much of Roman life. Even citizens who lived inside the city often maintained deep respect for farming. Many believed that working the land encouraged honesty, discipline, and gratitude. Watching experienced farmers became unexpectedly fascinating. Imagine standing beside an elderly woman carefully weaving baskets from willow branches gathered near the river. Her fingers move almost without thought, guided by years of practice. Each branch bends into place with quiet precision. A curious child asks how long it takes to learn such skill. She smiles. A lifetime. The answer carries no sadness, only contentment. Nearby, another craftsman patiently repairs a wooden cart damaged during harvest. Each careful tap of his hammer blends gently with birds singing in the surrounding trees. There is beauty in careful work. Romans understood this well. Perhaps this explains why so many hobbies involved creating rather than consuming. People carved wood. They embroidered clothing. They repaired household tools instead of replacing them. They polished bronze until it gleamed. Every task invited patience. Every finished object carried the quiet satisfaction of having been made by human hands. By midday, the sun climbs higher into the sky. Heat settles gently across the countryside. Travelers naturally seek shelter beneath clusters of trees or beside cool springs where fresh water bubbles steadily from underground. Imagine resting beside one such spring. Its water is wonderfully cold after the warmth of the road. Ferns grow thick along the shaded banks. Tiny birds flutter down to drink before quickly disappearing into nearby branches. Several travelers have stopped here as well. A merchant leading 2 donkeys shares dried figs with a young shepherd. A retired soldier removes his sandals and dips tired feet into the stream. An elderly couple quietly admire the peaceful surroundings without speaking very much at all. Silence feels comfortable. No one seems compelled to fill every moment with words. It is a silence built upon shared appreciation rather than loneliness. For many Romans, these gentle escapes into nature restored the spirit as surely as sleep restored the body. As afternoon begins its slow approach, the travelers rise one by one and continue their journeys. Some return to Rome. Others continue toward distant villages. You follow the familiar road back toward the city, where its walls gradually rise once again upon the horizon. The closer you come, the louder the sounds become. Merchants calling to customers. Wheels rolling over stone. Voices greeting old friends. The city welcomes everyone home. Yet you carry something back with you from the countryside. A quieter mind. A slower heartbeat. A deeper appreciation for the ordinary beauty that surrounded ancient Romans every single day. And as another evening gently approaches, you will soon discover that nature was only one way Romans escaped boredom. When the calendar marked a festival, the entire rhythm of life could change, filling the streets with color, music, shared traditions, and moments of joyful celebration that connected neighbors across every part of the city. Imagine waking before sunrise to a city that feels slightly different from the day before. The streets are cleaner than usual. Fresh garlands of greenery hang above several doorways. A neighbor smiles as she carries flowers in a woven basket, and somewhere nearby, the cheerful sound of a flute rises gently into the cool morning air. Today is not an ordinary day. The Romans celebrated many festivals throughout the year. Some honored the gods, others marked the changing seasons, and many simply brought communities together. For people whose daily lives were often filled with hard work, these occasions offered welcome pauses in the familiar rhythm of life. Picture yourself stepping outside just as the eastern sky begins to glow with soft shades of pink and gold. The city is awake earlier than usual. Bakers are already arranging warm loaves on wooden shelves, while vendors prepare sweet cakes flavored with honey and sprinkled with poppy seeds. The comforting aroma floats through the streets, mixing with the scent of fresh herbs and burning olive oil from nearby lamps. Children seem especially eager this morning. They know that something unusual is about to happen. Many Romans looked forward to festivals not only because of religious traditions, but because they transformed ordinary days into memorable ones. Friends who had not met for weeks found reasons to gather. Families shared meals that were a little more generous than usual. Musicians filled public spaces with gentle melodies that drifted through the city from morning until evening. You find yourself following a small crowd toward a familiar square. People are dressed neatly, though not extravagantly. Some wear freshly washed tunics. Others have decorated their hair with simple wreaths made from olive branches or flowers gathered outside the city. There is excitement, but it is calm rather than hurried. Neighbors greet one another warmly. Children wave to friends across the square. Even strangers exchange polite smiles. Imagine standing beneath the shade of a marble colonnade as the first musicians begin to play. A flute sings softly above the steady rhythm of a small drum. The music is not loud enough to overpower conversation. Instead, it seems to weave gently through the gathering, encouraging people to linger a little longer. Nearby, an elderly man begins telling his grandson about festivals he attended as a child. They seemed much bigger then, he says with a quiet laugh. The boy listens carefully, wondering if one day he will tell similar stories to children of his own. In this way, memories become traditions. As the morning slowly arrives, stalls begin offering special foods prepared only on certain occasions. Fresh fruit shines beneath the sunlight. Honey cakes disappear almost as quickly as they are baked. Roasted nuts fill small baskets, their warm aroma inviting passers-by to stop for a moment. Food was more than nourishment during festivals. It became a reason to gather. Imagine sharing a simple meal with neighbors beneath the shade of a fig tree growing near the edge of the square. Someone breaks a loaf of bread into generous pieces. Another pours a little watered wine into clay cups, while children enjoy fresh grapes picked only yesterday. The conversation moves easily from family news to old memories, from weather to farming, from amusing stories to hopes for the coming months. Nobody seems concerned about time. The hours pass naturally. One of the quiet pleasures of Roman festivals was simply watching the city change its appearance. Public buildings were decorated more carefully than usual. Fresh greenery softened the hard lines of stone walls. Bright fabrics fluttered gently in the breeze above narrow streets. Even familiar places seemed new. Picture yourself walking through one of those decorated streets. Sunlight filters through hanging branches of laurel, creating moving patches of light across the pavement. Somewhere ahead, children laugh as they play a game of chasing one another around a fountain. Their parents do not hurry them. There will be work tomorrow. Today belongs to celebration. For many Romans, festivals also meant hearing stories that had been passed down for generations. Skilled storytellers gathered small audiences wherever people naturally stopped to rest. Their voices were calm and expressive, inviting listeners into tales of ancient heroes, clever travelers, faithful friends, and remarkable journeys. Imagine settling onto a low stone wall while one storyteller begins his tale. His words are familiar to many in the crowd, yet no one seems tired of hearing them again. Each telling carries small differences. A pause here, a smile there, a gentle gesture that causes children to lean a little closer. The stories connect generations. Grandparents remember hearing them from their own elders. Parents now share them with their children. In this way, history becomes something alive rather than distant. As midday approaches, the warmth of the sun encourages many people to seek shade beneath covered walkways or garden trees. Some musicians continue playing quietly. Others pause to eat before beginning again later in the afternoon. You notice a group of neighbors gathered around an elderly woman who is teaching young girls how to weave flower crowns. Her fingers move slowly, patiently. Each blossom is placed with care. The girls imitate her movements, laughing gently whenever a flower slips loose. No one becomes frustrated. Learning itself is part of the enjoyment. Romans often discovered that boredom disappeared whenever they learned a new skill from someone with years of experience. Perhaps that lesson remains true even today. Imagine wandering away from the busiest streets toward a quieter neighborhood where families have opened their doors to visiting relatives. Inside one modest home, 3 generations share the same meal. An uncle describes a recent journey along the coast. A grandmother remembers winters from long ago when snow reached the hills outside Rome. A young cousin proudly recites a few lines of poetry learned from his teacher. Everyone listens. Not because every story is extraordinary, but because every voice belongs to someone they love. Outside, afternoon slowly begins to soften into evening. The sunlight becomes warmer. Long shadows stretch across the stone streets. A cool breeze returns after the heat of the day. Children who have spent hours running through the city finally begin to grow tired. One by one, families make their way home. As you walk with them, you realize that festivals offered something far deeper than entertainment. They reminded people that they belonged to a community. Shared songs, shared meals, shared traditions, shared memories. Together, these simple experiences quietly pushed boredom aside, replacing it with the comforting feeling of being surrounded by familiar faces. The streets gradually grow quieter once more. Oil lamps begin glowing behind open windows, and the scent of evening meals drifts gently into the cooling air. Somewhere in the distance, a lone flute plays one final melody before the musician packs away his instrument for the night. The city settles peacefully beneath a sky slowly filling with stars. Tomorrow, another ordinary day will return. Yet even ordinary days held quiet pleasures for the Romans, especially for those who loved to read, to learn, and to spend long afternoons exploring ideas that could carry the mind far beyond the walls of Rome itself. Imagine a peaceful morning unfolding over ancient Rome. The city has already begun its familiar rhythm, yet one quiet corner remains wrapped in a gentle stillness. Here, away from the busiest markets and the echoing workshops, there is another way to pass the hours, one that asks for nothing more than curiosity and patience. You find yourself walking beneath a long colonnade where the marble beneath your feet has been polished smooth by countless generations. A cool breeze slips between the tall columns, carrying with it the faint scent of papyrus, beeswax, and freshly cut wood. The sounds of the city seem softer here, as though even Rome understands that this is a place for thoughtful minds. Although not everyone in the Roman world could read, literacy was more common than many people imagine, especially in the larger towns and cities. Merchants kept records of their business, Officials wrote letters across the empire. Soldiers sometimes sent messages home, and educated families valued reading as an important part of daily life. For those who had the opportunity, books, or more accurately, scrolls, became faithful companions. Picture yourself entering a quiet room where wooden shelves hold carefully rolled scrolls tied with colored cords. Some contain poems, others preserve speeches, histories, philosophical discussions, or practical advice about farming, medicine, architecture, or astronomy. A reader gently unties one scroll before slowly unrolling it across a wooden table. There is no hurry. Reading in the ancient world was often slower than it is today. Each line invited careful thought. Sometimes people even read aloud, allowing the rhythm of the words to fill the quiet room. Imagine listening to a calm voice reading a poem written many years before. The words describe peaceful countryside, gentle rivers, changing seasons, and the simple joys of ordinary life. A few listeners close their eyes, letting the images settle gently into their thoughts. Nobody interrupts. For a little while, the world outside seems wonderfully distant. Many Romans discovered that reading was one of the surest ways to escape boredom. A scroll could carry its reader across deserts, over mountains, onto distant seas, or back through centuries into the lives of people long gone. Without leaving their seat, they traveled farther than most people ever could. You find yourself wondering what it might have felt like to hold such knowledge in your hands. Every scroll represented months of careful labor. Papyrus sheets had been prepared one by one. Scribes copied each letter with remarkable patience. A single mistake might require beginning an entire section again. Because books were valuable, they were treated with great respect. Readers handled them gently, almost as though greeting an old friend. As the morning slowly arrives, a teacher gathers several young students beneath the shade of an open courtyard. Each child carries a small, wax tablet, framed in wood. Using a pointed stylus, they carefully press letters into the smooth wax surface. The lesson begins quietly. The teacher speaks one word. The children repeat it together. Then they copy it onto their tablets. If a mistake appears, the wax can simply be smoothed flat, allowing them to try again. Learning is not rushed. It unfolds steadily, like water flowing through one of Rome's many fountains. Imagine sitting nearby, watching the children grow more confident with every lesson. One little boy proudly writes his name without help for the first time. His smile spreads slowly across his face. The teacher nods with quiet approval. No grand celebration is needed. Small achievements bring their own quiet happiness. Education itself helped many Romans overcome boredom. Every new word, every historical story, every mathematical puzzle offered another doorway into understanding the world. Adults, too, continued learning throughout their lives. Some studied philosophy, searching for peaceful ways to face disappointment or uncertainty. Others explored the movements of the stars, believing that careful observation revealed the orderly nature of the universe. Many simply enjoyed asking thoughtful questions. Why do people dream? Why do seasons change? What makes someone truly wise? These conversations often lasted for hours. Imagine joining a small circle of friends seated beneath a vine-covered pergola in in a peaceful garden. Clay cups rest beside them, filled with cool water. Bees drift lazily between blooming flowers, while a gentle breeze stirs the leaves overhead. No one is arguing. Instead, each person listens carefully before speaking. One friend suggests that happiness comes from gratitude. Another believes it grows from moderation. A third quietly says that perhaps happiness is found in appreciating ordinary moments exactly as they are. The others smile. There may never be a perfect answer, yet searching together brings its own quiet satisfaction. For many Romans, this kind of discussion was every bit as enjoyable as attending a festival or watching a game. The mind, like the body, appreciated gentle exercise. As afternoon approaches, you continue your walk through another peaceful neighborhood. A bookseller has arranged several scrolls outside his modest shop. Curious customers stop to examine them, asking polite questions about the contents. A young man hopes to improve his public speaking. An elderly woman searches for a collection of poems she once enjoyed many years ago. A father purchases a simple text to help teach his son. Knowledge quietly passes from one generation to the next. Nearby, a retired soldier sits beneath the shade of a plane tree, with a scroll resting across his knees. Every so often, he pauses, looking toward the sky, as though reflecting on what he has just read. Perhaps he remembers distant places mentioned in the story. Perhaps he simply enjoys the peaceful afternoon. Either way, he seems entirely content. You notice that nobody appears concerned with filling every minute. There is comfort in reading one page slowly. Comfort in pausing to think. Comfort in allowing silence to become part of the experience. As the sunlight gradually softens, more neighbors gather in small gardens where climbing vines provide welcome shade. Some bring scrolls to read aloud. Others bring only themselves, happy to listen. A grandmother recites a familiar fable to her grandchildren. The children lean against her shoulder as sparrows hop through the grass nearby. The lesson hidden within the story is gentle, encouraging kindness, patience, and wisdom rather than cleverness alone. When the tale ends, the youngest child asks if she can tell it again tomorrow. The grandmother smiles. Of course. The best stories are never truly finished. They simply wait to be told once more. As evening begins to settle over the city, lamps are lit one by one behind open windows. Their warm glow spreads softly into the streets, while the scent of evening meals rises once again from family kitchens. You realize that learning was never separated from everyday life in ancient Rome. Reading, listening, thinking, sharing ideas. These quiet pleasures could fill an afternoon as completely as any public celebration. Perhaps that is why boredom so often slipped quietly away. There was always another story waiting inside a scroll, another thoughtful conversation beneath a shady tree, another lesson hidden within the ordinary moments of the day. And tomorrow, as another peaceful dawn arrives over Rome, you will discover that even the city's bustling streets could become a stage for gentle performers, wandering entertainers, and unexpected moments of laughter that brightened the lives of ordinary people. Imagine the city just as the afternoon warmth begins to soften. The bright sun still rests high above the rooftops. but long shadows are beginning to stretch across the marble streets. Merchants have settled into a comfortable rhythm, and the busiest crowds have thinned just enough for the city to feel welcoming, rather than overwhelming. You find yourself wandering without any destination in mind. In ancient Rome, this was not considered wasted time. For many people, simply walking through familiar streets opened the door to countless small surprises. Every corner held the possibility of meeting an old friend, discovering a traveling merchant from a distant province, or pausing to watch someone whose talent turned an ordinary afternoon into a memorable one. Picture yourself entering a lively square where a small circle of people has quietly gathered. No grand stage has been built. No banners announce what is about to happen. At the center stands a single performer. He smiles warmly before beginning his act. With calm, practiced movements, he tosses 3 brightly colored balls into the air. They rise and fall in smooth, graceful patterns, never seeming hurried. Children sitting near the front watch with wide eyes, while their parents smile at their delight. The performance is simple, yet it holds everyone's attention. The performer catches each ball with effortless precision before bowing politely. The crowd offers warm applause, not loud or thunderous, just enough to show appreciation. He thanks them with another smile before continuing. Traveling entertainers were familiar visitors throughout the Roman world. They moved from town to town, bringing music, storytelling, juggling, comic performances, and other forms of amusement wherever people gathered. For communities that rarely experience dramatic changes in daily life, the arrival of such visitors was always welcome. Imagine following another small crowd as they stop beside a storyteller, standing beneath the shade of a broad plane tree. His face carries the gentle lines of many years spent traveling from village to village. He begins speaking in a calm voice. His story tells of an ordinary fisherman who discovers that kindness often brings greater rewards than greed. There are no frightening moments, no sudden surprises. Instead, the tale unfolds slowly, allowing listeners to picture each place and every character. Children lean comfortably against their parents. Older listeners nod knowingly when familiar lessons appear. Although many have heard similar stories before, they listen with just as much care. A well-told story never truly grows old. Each telling feels a little different. Each audience brings new smiles. As a light breeze stirs the leaves overhead, the storyteller reaches the end of his tale. For a moment, no one speaks. Then a little girl quietly asks if he knows another story. The old man laughs gently. I know many. The listeners settle themselves once again. There is nowhere else they would rather be. You continue your peaceful walk through the city. Further along the street, another form of entertainment has gathered an audience. A musician sits upon a low stone bench, with a small lyre resting across his lap. His fingers move lightly across the strings. The melody is gentle and thoughtful. It seems perfectly suited to the slow pace of the afternoon. Imagine sitting nearby as the music blends with the sounds of everyday Roman life, the splash of water from a nearby fountain, the distant creak of a wooden cart, the soft flutter of pigeons lifting into the sky, the quiet conversations of neighbors passing by. Together, these sounds create a harmony that belongs entirely to the city itself. Music in ancient Rome was not reserved only for great ceremonies or wealthy households. It appeared wherever people wished to share beauty with others. Some musicians earned their living through performance. Others simply played because they loved music. A passerby pauses for a few moments, then another. Soon, a small audience has formed. Nobody seems impatient. Some close their eyes. Others gently tap a foot to the steady rhythm. When the song ends, several listeners thank the musician before continuing on their way. The performer seems content. His purpose has never been fame, only to brighten someone's day. As the afternoon slowly gives way to evening, you notice another familiar sight. A group of children has gathered around an elderly man carrying a small wooden box. Curiosity shines in every young face. Carefully, he opens the lid. Inside are small carved animals made from wood: a horse, a sheep, a dog, a tiny bird with carefully shaped wings. One by one, he brings them to life through simple movements and cheerful voices. The children laugh softly as each animal seems to greet the next. The little performance lasts only a short while, yet its memory may remain with those children for many years. Simple pleasures often leave the deepest impressions. Nearby, several older neighbors watch the children with quiet affection. Perhaps they remember similar afternoons from their own childhood. Perhaps they once stood in exactly the same place, smiling at the very same kind of performance. Time has passed, yet the simple joy remains unchanged. Imagine continuing toward one of Rome's many fountains. Fresh water pours continuously from a carved stone mouth into a broad basin below. Travelers pause to drink. Women fill clay jars. Children splash cool water onto their faces before running off once again. The fountain itself becomes a meeting place. Not because anyone arranged it, simply because people naturally gather wherever life flows gently. Two friends who have not seen one another for several weeks unexpectedly meet beside the water. The conversation begins with a greeting. Soon they are sharing stories of recent journeys, family celebrations, and amusing moments from everyday life. They laugh quietly together. Neither seems eager to leave. Perhaps boredom disappeared so easily in Rome because people remained open to these unexpected meetings. They welcomed conversation whenever it appeared. They allowed ordinary moments to become meaningful. As the golden light of late afternoon settles across the city, craftsmen begin closing their workshops. A blacksmith carefully places his tools in order before leaving. A potter wipes clay from his hands. A tailor folds neatly finished garments onto wooden shelves. The working day is ending, but another peaceful evening is only beginning. Families slowly make their way home through streets glowing softly beneath the lowering sun. Neighbors pause to exchange a few final words before supper. The smell of roasting vegetables, warm bread, garlic, onions, and fragrant herbs drifts gently from open kitchens. Cats stretch lazily in the remaining patches of sunlight. Above, swallows circle gracefully before disappearing toward their evening nests. You find yourself smiling at the quiet rhythm of it all. Rome was a vast and remarkable city. Yet so much of its happiness was found not in magnificent monuments or famous victories, but in these simple encounters that gently filled the hours. A kind conversation, a familiar melody, a storyteller beneath a tree. Children laughing at carved wooden animals, a stranger becoming a friend. As darkness slowly settles over the rooftops and the first stars appear above the sleeping city, another day draws peacefully to its close. Tomorrow will reveal another quiet corner of Roman life, where gardens, household pets, and the gentle companionship of animals offered comfort, relaxation, and another timeless way to chase away boredom. Imagine the city still resting beneath a pale morning sky. A soft mist lingers over the gardens tucked behind stone walls, and the first rays of sunlight gently warm the terracotta rooftops. Before the busiest streets fill with merchants and travelers, there is a quieter Rome waiting to be discovered. You find yourself following a narrow path through a modest courtyard, where climbing vines stretch across a wooden frame. Drops of dew cling to the leaves, catching the morning light like tiny pieces of glass. The scent of rosemary and lavender drifts through the cool air, while somewhere nearby a dove coos softly from the roof of a neighboring home. Although history often remembers Rome for its armies, temples, and emperors, many Romans found their greatest comfort much closer to home. They found it in their gardens. Even families with only a little space often tried to grow something green. A few herbs beside a doorway, a flowering plant near a window, a small fig tree reaching toward the sunlight. Those with larger homes sometimes created peaceful inner gardens, where fountains, shrubs, and shaded paths offered a welcome escape from the busy world outside. Imagine stepping into one of these quiet spaces. Almost immediately, the sounds of the city become distant. The gentle splash of a fountain replaces the rumble of carts. Birdsong rises above the rooftops. Bees move patiently from flower to flower. The air feels cooler beneath the shade of carefully tended trees. A woman kneels beside a bed of herbs, gently trimming away dry leaves. Nearby, her husband waters young olive trees using a clay jug. Neither speaks very much. There is no need. The peaceful work is enough. Gardening offered many Romans something deeply satisfying. Plants rewarded patience. Seeds did not hurry. Flowers bloomed in their own time. Fruit ripened only when the seasons allowed. Perhaps this slow rhythm reminded people that not every worthwhile thing could be rushed. You pause beside a small pond, where lily pads float quietly across still water. Tiny fish glide beneath the surface, almost invisible until the sunlight catches their silver scales. A child crouches beside the pond, watching them with complete attention. Minutes pass. The child remains perfectly content. Sometimes, the simplest moments become the most memorable. Picture yourself walking farther into the garden. A narrow path winds between flowering shrubs. Marble statues, softened by years of weather, stand quietly among the greenery. Their edges are no longer sharp, yet they seem to belong perfectly within the peaceful surroundings. An elderly man sits beneath a grapevine, carefully weaving reeds into a small basket. His hands move slowly, surely, without wasted effort. A young neighbor stops to watch. "How long have you been making baskets?" she asks. The old man smiles without looking up. "Long enough to know that every basket teaches something new." His answer is simple, yet it carries quiet wisdom. Romans often believed that hobbies kept both the hands and the mind healthy. carving wood, repairing tools, weaving cloth, tending gardens, or painting decorative patterns onto pottery filled many peaceful afternoons. The finished object mattered, but so did the process itself. Imagine hearing the gentle scrape of a carving knife shaping a small piece of olive wood. Thin curls fall quietly onto the ground. Slowly, almost magically, the rough block begins to resemble a small bird. No audience watches. No prize awaits. The satisfaction comes from creating something with patience and care. As the morning slowly arrives, another familiar companion appears. A dog trots happily across the courtyard, wagging its tail as it greets each member of the household. Dogs were common throughout the Roman world. Some guarded homes, others accompanied shepherds across open fields. Many simply shared everyday life with the families who cared for them. Picture yourself sitting upon a stone bench while the friendly animal rests comfortably beside your feet. Every so often, it lifts its head, watching a butterfly drift through the garden before settling down once again. Its calm presence makes the morning feel even more peaceful. Cats, too, were becoming increasingly familiar in many Roman communities, valued for keeping grain stores free from mice and other unwanted visitors. Imagine a graceful cat stretching lazily across a patch of warm sunlight. It closes its eyes, completely relaxed. Nearby, sparrows hop fearlessly between scattered crumbs left from breakfast. The cat watches them for a moment, then decides that sleep is far more appealing than hunting. Even animals seemed to understand how to enjoy a quiet day. As the warmth of midday approaches, neighbors begin visiting one another's homes. One family brings fresh figs gathered from their tree. Another shares a small basket of walnuts. These gifts are modest, yet they strengthen friendships that have grown over many years. Imagine several neighbors gathering beneath the shade of a pergola covered in grapevines. Clay cups filled with cool water rest upon a wooden table. Someone slices fresh bread. Another passes around a bowl of olives, seasoned with fragrant herbs. Conversation flows gently. No single voice dominates. An elderly woman recalls how the garden looked when she was a little girl. A young father proudly points to a newly planted tree that his son helped water each morning. The smallest child excitedly announces that a bird has built a nest near the back wall. Everyone walks quietly to see it. They stand together for a few moments, watching the tiny parent bird carefully arrange twigs and feathers. Nobody speaks above a whisper. Some moments deserve silence. You begin to understand why gardens held such an important place in Roman life. They reminded people to slow down, to notice changing seasons, to appreciate living things that asked only for care and patience. Perhaps boredom found little room to grow where flowers opened each morning, birds returned every spring, and vines slowly climbed toward the summer sun. As afternoon settles gently over the city, warm light filters through leaves that sway softly in the breeze. A grandmother shells peas into a woven basket. A boy practices writing letters on his wax tablet beneath a fig tree. The family dog naps peacefully beside the doorway. Life moves at its own comfortable pace. No one seems concerned that the hours are passing quietly. Indeed, quiet hours are often the most treasured of all. As evening approaches, The garden begins to change once more. The air cools. The scent of jasmine becomes stronger. Crickets begin their gentle evening song while the first stars appear above the rooftops. Oil lamps are lit one by one, their golden glow reflecting softly upon the leaves. Families gather outdoors for a final conversation before sleep. Someone points toward the bright evening star shining above the western horizon. Children wonder whether travelers in distant provinces are seeing the same sky. Their parents smile. Of course they are. The stars belong to everyone. You find yourself lingering a little longer before leaving the peaceful garden behind. It has revealed another quiet truth about ancient Rome. The Romans did not always need grand spectacles to overcome boredom. Sometimes all they needed was a garden, a faithful dog, a blooming flower, kind neighbors, and enough unhurried time to notice the beauty already surrounding them. Tomorrow, your gentle journey will continue into another peaceful corner of Roman life, where evening gatherings, family traditions, and stories passed from one generation to the next, quietly brought warmth to countless ordinary nights. Imagine the last warmth of the day slowly slipping away as the sun settles behind the distant hills west of Rome. The sky glows with gentle shades of amber, rose, and pale violet, and the marble temples catch the fading light for just a few quiet moments before evening begins its slow arrival. The city's busiest hours are now behind it. Shopkeepers lower their wooden shutters one by one. The steady tapping of hammers fades from the workshops. Bakers brush flour from their hands after selling the day's final loaves. Across the neighborhoods, families begin making their way home through streets that seem softer now than they did beneath the bright afternoon sun. You find yourself walking at an unhurried pace beside them. A woman carries a small basket filled with onions, herbs, and fresh bread. A young boy proudly holds a tiny bundle of carrots he helped choose at the market. An elderly man walks with the help of a smooth wooden stick, stopping every few steps to greet neighbors who know him well. Nobody appears rushed. The evening belongs to everyone. Imagine turning into a narrow residential street where modest homes stand shoulder to shoulder. Their walls are simple, yet many doorways are decorated with potted plants or climbing vines. Small oil lamps have begun to glow behind open windows, casting warm golden light onto the stone pavement outside. The smell of supper fills the air, fresh bread, lentils slowly simmering in clay pots, roasted onions, garlic gently cooking in olive oil, a handful of herbs gathered from nearby gardens. For most Romans, the evening meal was never simply about eating. It was a daily opportunity to gather. Families spent much of the day apart. Parents worked. Children studied or helped with household tasks. Craftsmen remained busy in their workshops. Farmers labored in nearby fields. Now everyone slowly returned to the same table. Picture yourself entering a modest Roman home. The main room is not large, but it feels welcoming. A few simple stools surround a sturdy wooden table. Shelves along one wall hold clay bowls, cups, and carefully folded cloths. An oil lamp flickers gently, filling the room with soft shadows that dance across the plaster walls. The family takes their places. There is no great ceremony, no elaborate speeches, only familiar faces sharing another ordinary evening together. The youngest child eagerly begins describing something amusing that happened earlier in the day. Everyone listens. The story is small, yet it matters. The father smiles as he recalls meeting an old friend in the marketplace after many months apart. The grandmother quietly reminds everyone of a recipe her own mother once prepared during harvest season. The conversation drifts naturally from one memory to another. No one checks the passing of time. No one worries about silence. Sometimes, a few peaceful moments pass without anyone speaking. Outside, a cricket begins its evening song. Somewhere farther down the street, another family laughs together. The sounds blend gently into the quiet rhythm of the neighborhood. Imagine that supper has now finished. Instead of immediately preparing for sleep, many Romans remain together for another hour or two. These peaceful evenings often became the heart of family life. An elderly grandfather reaches for a small wooden box resting upon a nearby shelf. The children know exactly what it contains. Inside are keepsakes collected over many years. A smooth pebble gathered beside a distant river. A tiny bronze coin worn almost flat by countless hands. A carved piece of bone brought home by a relative returning from military service. Each object carries a story. The grandfather places the pebble into the youngest child's hand. "I found this," he begins softly, "during a journey many years before your father was even born." The children lean closer. The room grows wonderfully quiet. No one interrupts. The story unfolds slowly, filled with simple details. The weather that morning, the sound of birds above the river, the kindness of strangers met along the road. The long walk home beneath a sky filled with stars. These are not tales of famous battles or mighty emperors. They are stories of ordinary life. And somehow, those are the ones remembered most clearly. You find yourself smiling as the children ask thoughtful questions. What happened next? Were you frightened? Did you ever return there again? The grandfather answers each one patiently. Perhaps he has told this story dozens of times. Yet he tells it with exactly the same care. He knows that one day these children may repeat it to children of their own. In this way, family history quietly survives. As the evening deepens, another neighbor knocks gently upon the open door. He has finished his own supper and has come only to visit for a little while. This is perfectly ordinary. Roman neighborhoods often felt like extended families. People borrowed tools, shared food, helped repair damaged roofs, watched one another's children, celebrated together, grieved together. Such friendships left little room for loneliness. Imagine several neighbors now sitting together outside their homes. Wooden stools have been carried into the narrow street, where the evening air feels cooler than indoors. Above them stretches a sky growing steadily darker. One by one, familiar stars begin appearing. An elderly woman points toward a bright constellation she has known since childhood. "My father showed me those stars," she says quietly, "and now I show them to my grandchildren." The children gaze upward with quiet wonder. The stars seem unchanged despite the passing generations. For the Romans, the night sky often inspired peaceful reflection. Without the bright lights of modern cities, countless stars filled the heavens. Many people recognized familiar constellations. Some believed they reflected stories from long ago. Others simply admired their quiet beauty. Imagine lying comfortably upon a folded blanket, spread across a flat rooftop. The stone beneath still holds a little warmth from the day's sunshine. A soft breeze carries the scent of nearby gardens. Far away, a dog barks once before settling again. The city grows quieter with every passing moment. Parents speak more softly now. Children begin rubbing tired eyes. One little girl quietly asks whether the stars have always looked the same. Her mother smiles gently. As long as anyone remembers. It is a comforting thought. Generations have looked upon this very sky. The same moon, the same familiar patterns of light, the same peaceful silence. Before long, families begin saying goodnight. Doors close gently. Oil lamps are trimmed lower. The last conversations fade into whispers. Only the occasional footsteps of a late traveler echo through the sleeping streets. You remain for a few moments beneath the stars, reflecting on everything you have quietly discovered. Romans escaped boredom not through constant excitement, but through steady companionship. Shared meals, gentle conversations, old stories lovingly repeated, neighborly kindness, peaceful evenings beneath an endless sky. Perhaps these ordinary traditions were more valuable than any grand entertainment. As sleep slowly settles over Rome, another chapter of daily life comes gently to a close. Yet your journey through the ancient world is not finished. Tomorrow, you will discover how changing seasons, yearly traditions, and the quiet passage of time shaped the Roman understanding of happiness, reminding them that life's greatest pleasures often returned again and again, just like the sunrise over the eternal city. Imagine that another dawn arrives quietly over the ancient city. Before the streets fill with merchants, before the workshops echo with the sound of chisels and hammers, the first light touches the highest rooftops and slowly spreads across the temples, gardens, and narrow lanes that have welcomed countless mornings before this one. A cool breeze carries the scent of damp stone and fresh earth. Birds greet the new day from the branches of cypress trees, while the steady murmur of flowing fountains reminds the city that another ordinary day has begun. You find yourself standing near one of Rome's great gates, watching people leave the city just as others arrive. A farmer guides a small cart filled with vegetables harvested before sunrise. A shepherd gently leads a flock of sheep toward nearby grazing fields. Travelers carrying walking staffs pause for a moment to admire the morning sky before continuing their journeys. The scene is peaceful. Nothing extraordinary happens. Yet for the Romans, mornings like this were among life's quiet treasures. One lesson appears again and again as you wander through their world. The Romans understood that boredom could not always be chased away by searching for something new. Sometimes, happiness came from returning to familiar things. Imagine walking beside an elderly gardener who has followed the same path every morning for many years. He greets the same neighbors. He pauses beside the same fountain. He waters the same olive trees planted decades earlier by his father. To an outsider, the routine might seem repetitive. To him, it feels comforting. Each season brings small changes that reward careful attention. Spring fills the gardens with blossoms. Summer ripens grapes beneath the warm sun. Autumn colors the vineyards with deep shades of gold and crimson. Winter leaves the branches bare, reminding everyone that quiet months are also part of life's natural rhythm. The Romans paid close attention to these changes. The passing seasons shaped nearly every aspect of daily life. Farmers planned their work accordingly. Families prepared food for the colder months. Religious festivals marked important moments throughout the year. Children learned to recognize the first signs of spring just as eagerly as the arrival of autumn harvests. Picture yourself walking through the countryside on an early autumn morning. The vineyards are heavy with ripe grapes. Entire families have gathered among the rows of vines. Laughter drifts softly across the fields as baskets gradually fill with fruit. Young children proudly carry only a few bunches at a time. Older workers move steadily, their hands practiced after many harvests. Nobody rushes. The work itself becomes a celebration. There is satisfaction in knowing that another successful season has arrived. When the day's work is finished, families often gather beneath nearby trees to share bread, cheese, olives, and fresh grapes picked only moments before. Someone begins humming a familiar melody. Another quietly joins in. Soon, several gentle voices blend together beneath the open sky. No audience watches. The song belongs only to those gathered there. Imagine sitting among them as the afternoon breeze stirs the leaves overhead. A grandfather tells the children that he remembers harvesting grapes beside his own grandfather many decades earlier. The youngest child laughs in surprise. "So this happened before I was born?" The old man smiles warmly. "For many, many years before." The children begin to understand that they are becoming part of something much older than themselves. Traditions quietly connect one generation to the next. Perhaps that is why they rarely become boring. Each year brings new children, new memories, new stories to tell. As the afternoon slowly passes, you notice another peaceful Roman custom. People enjoyed watching nature itself, not because it offered endless surprises, but because its familiar rhythms brought quiet comfort. Imagine resting beside a gently flowing river. The water glides smoothly around polished stones, reflecting patches of blue sky between overhanging branches. Dragonflies skim across the surface. A heron stands perfectly still at the water's edge, waiting patiently for a fish. Nearby, reeds sway gently in the breeze. Nothing asks for your attention. Nothing demands excitement. The Romans understood how to simply observe. They watched clouds drifting overhead. They admired sunsets that painted the sky in changing colors. They noticed the first autumn leaves falling onto quiet roads. Such moments reminded them that beauty often arrived quietly. You continue your gentle journey toward a small farming village not far from Rome. The houses are modest. Smoke rises lazily from a few chimneys. Children help feed chickens, while an elderly woman hangs freshly washed cloth beneath the warm afternoon sun. Several neighbors gather beneath the shade of a large oak tree. One man carefully repairs a fishing net. Another sharpens a wooden rake. A young woman spins wool into thread with slow, steady movements. Their hands remain busy. Their conversations remain easy. Nobody seems anxious to finish quickly. Time itself feels slower here. You realize that many Romans measured a good day not by how much excitement it contained, but by how peaceful it felt. A calm conversation. A successful harvest. A healthy family. Enough food for supper. These simple blessings carried great importance. As the golden light of evening spreads across the fields, families begin making their way home once again. Children gather wildflowers during the walk. Parents carry baskets filled with the day's harvest. Dogs trot happily alongside, occasionally racing ahead before returning to familiar feet. The road home is filled with gentle conversation. Imagine reaching the city gates just as the first evening lamps begin glowing within Rome. The familiar streets welcome everyone back. Bakers prepare tomorrow's dough. Shopkeepers sweep dust from their doorways. The scent of warm bread once again drifts through the cooling air. A musician softly plays a lyre somewhere beyond the next corner. Its gentle melody rises above the quiet footsteps of neighbors returning home. You pause for a moment beside a fountain, whose water has flowed continuously through countless seasons. Children who once played beside it have grown into parents. Parents have become grandparents. Generations have come and gone. Yet the water continues its peaceful journey. Perhaps the Romans found comfort in such constancy. Life changed. Empires expanded. Leaders rose and fell. But ordinary joys remained wonderfully familiar. Fresh bread in the morning, conversation with neighbors, games shared with friends, gardens blooming each spring, stories told beneath the stars, the laughter of children echoing through quiet streets. These were the moments that gently pushed boredom aside, not for an hour, but for a lifetime. As darkness slowly settles across the eternal city once more, oil lamps glow warmly behind open windows, and the sounds of the day gradually fade into silence. You find yourself taking one final look across the rooftops, now silver, beneath the rising moon. The Rome of emperors and monuments is impressive, but the Rome of ordinary people, the gardeners, bakers, teachers, storytellers, children, neighbors, musicians, readers, and friends, is perhaps even more remarkable. Their days remind us that a meaningful life is rarely built from extraordinary moments alone. More often, it grows quietly from simple routines, shared kindness, patient work, peaceful evenings, and the gentle pleasure of being fully present in the ordinary world. And as another tranquil night embraces the ancient city, you drift peacefully onward, ready to discover where tomorrow's gentle journey through history will lead. Imagine that the moon has slowly crossed the sky, and the city has spent the night wrapped in quiet stillness. Only the soft crackle of dying oil lamps and the occasional footsteps of a night watchman have disturbed the silence. Now, far to the east, the first hint of dawn begins to brighten the horizon. The stars fade one by one. A cool breeze slips gently through the narrow streets, carrying the faint scent of damp stone, fresh water, and the ashes of yesterday's cooking fires. You find yourself awake before most of the city. There is something wonderfully peaceful about Rome at this hour. Without the bustle of the markets or the conversations that will soon fill every corner, the city almost seems to belong to the birds. Sparrows hop across quiet courtyards in search of scattered crumbs. Swallows glide gracefully above the rooftops. Somewhere beyond the city walls, a rooster announces the coming day. The eternal city stretches before you, calm and unhurried. Imagine beginning a slow walk through streets that only a short time ago were filled with evening laughter. The paving stones still hold the coolness of the night beneath your sandals. A fountain continues its endless song, just as it has every hour since yesterday. Its water never becomes bored. It simply continues flowing. Perhaps the Romans noticed lessons like this more often than we do. Nature repeated itself constantly. Morning followed night. Spring returned after winter. The moon waxed and waned. Yet none of these familiar events seemed ordinary to those who paused long enough to notice them. As the morning slowly arrives, you meet an elderly neighbor carefully sweeping the small space outside her home. She performs the same task every day. Her movements are slow, practiced, almost graceful. A younger passerby greets her warmly. "Good morning," she smiles, "and a peaceful morning to you." The conversation lasts only a few moments, yet both continue their day a little happier. Small kindnesses were woven quietly into Roman life. Many people knew the same neighbors for decades. They watched children grow into adults. They celebrated weddings. They mourned losses together. Over time, these relationships became one of the strongest protections against loneliness. Imagine entering a modest bakery just as the first loaves emerge from the oven. Warm air fills the room. The comforting aroma of freshly baked bread spreads into the street, drawing the earliest customers inside. The baker smiles as familiar faces arrive. He already knows what many of them will buy. One elderly customer always chooses a round loaf. Another prefers smaller rolls. A young mother purchases enough bread for her growing family. The conversations are familiar. They do not need to be new every morning. Their familiarity is exactly what makes them comforting. Outside once again, the city gradually awakens. Merchants arrange baskets of fruit. A cobbler places freshly repaired sandals outside his workshop. A potter carefully sets glazed bowls where morning sunlight catches their polished surfaces. You pause beside the workshop for a few quiet moments. The potter lifts a finished bowl into the light, turning it slowly in his hands. He notices one tiny imperfection near the rim. Most customers would never see it. Still, he gently smooths it with patient care. The work itself brings him satisfaction. Romans admired skill earned through years of quiet practice. Whether weaving cloth, carving wood, writing beautiful letters, or tending vines, mastery came one careful day at a time. There was no shortcut. Perhaps this patient approach helped protect them from boredom as well. Whenever there was free time, there was always something that could be improved. A tool could be sharpened. A garden could be watered. A poem could be memorized. A conversation could continue. A neighbor could be visited. Life always offered another gentle task. Imagine following a shaded lane toward a small courtyard where several children have gathered around their grandfather. Instead of toys made from expensive materials, he has brought a handful of smooth pebbles collected during many walks along the river Tiber. "Choose your favorite," he says. Each child examines the stones carefully. One prefers the smoothest. Another chooses the largest. A little girl selects the one with delicate white lines running across its gray surface. The grandfather begins inventing stories about each pebble. This one traveled down the river for many years. This one rested beneath a waterfall. This one waited patiently for someone to discover it. The children know these tales are imagined. That hardly matters. Their imaginations eagerly complete the rest. For a little while, ordinary stones become remarkable treasures. You realize once again that boredom often disappears wherever imagination is welcomed. As the sun climbs higher, you leave the courtyard and continue toward one of Rome's quieter gardens. The paths are nearly empty. Fresh dew still sparkles on blades of grass. A gardener pauses beside a rose bush, carefully removing faded blossoms so that new ones may bloom. Nearby, butterflies drift lazily between flowering herbs. Bees hum gently among the lavender. Nothing in the garden seems rushed. Everything unfolds according to its own season. You find a shaded bench beneath a broad plane tree. Its leaves whisper softly whenever the breeze passes through. For several peaceful minutes, you simply sit. No conversation, no task, only quiet observation. A pair of doves lands nearby. One begins searching patiently through the grass. The other watches carefully before following. Even these small moments become strangely satisfying when given enough attention. Perhaps that was one of Rome's quiet secrets. The city offered endless opportunities to notice what many people overlooked: the changing color of the sky, the scent of fresh herbs after rain, the sound of sandals echoing beneath stone arches, the gentle laughter of neighbors greeting one another, the steady rhythm of craftsmen shaping wood, stone, and bronze. Ordinary life became extraordinary simply because people took the time to experience it fully. As afternoon slowly approaches, families begin preparing once more for another evening together. Tomorrow will resemble today in many ways, and today resembled yesterday. Yet the Romans did not seem disappointed by this. Instead, familiar routines became the threads that quietly stitched their lives together. Imagine taking one last slow walk through the streets before the sun begins its descent. Children wave as they hurry home. An old musician tunes his lyre beneath a familiar doorway. Fresh bread cools upon wooden shelves. A neighbor waters flowers growing beside her entrance. The fountain continues its endless song. Everything feels wonderfully complete. You pause for a final glance across the rooftops of ancient Rome. You have wandered through its markets and gardens, shared peaceful meals with families, listened to storytellers beneath shady trees, watched children invent games from simple objects, walked country roads lined with vineyards, rested beside quiet streams, sat beneath countless stars. And through it all, one gentle truth has appeared again and again. The Romans did not conquer boredom because every day was exciting. They overcame it because they found meaning in ordinary moments. Friendship instead of loneliness. Conversation instead of silence. Curiosity instead of restlessness. Patience instead of hurry. And gratitude instead of endless searching for something new. As the evening light begins to soften across the eternal city once more, your long journey through the quiet pleasures of Roman life gently prepares to reach its peaceful conclusion. Imagine another quiet evening settling over ancient Rome. The day's warmth slowly slips away, leaving behind cool stone streets that have witnessed countless footsteps through the centuries. Above the rooftops, the sky changes from pale blue to soft shades of amber and lavender before the first stars quietly begin to appear. You find yourself returning to a familiar neighborhood where many of the faces now seem comfortably known. The baker is sweeping flour from the doorway of his shop. The potter carefully covers freshly made vessels to protect them from the cool night air. A tailor folds away his needles and thread after another peaceful day's work. Nothing remarkable has happened today, yet nobody seems disappointed. For many Romans, an ordinary day completed with honest work and quiet companionship was reason enough for contentment. Imagine sitting beside a public fountain whose clear water has flowed continuously for generations. The sound is steady and calming. Children who had been playing nearby only a short while ago have now been called home for supper. Their laughter slowly fades into the distance as the streets become quieter. An elderly man arrives carrying a simple wooden stool. He places it beside the fountain, exactly where he has done for many evenings before. Soon, another neighbor joins him, then another. Without planning it, a small gathering forms. One person speaks about the changing weather. Another wonders whether tomorrow's market will be especially busy. Someone quietly remembers a neighbor who moved away many years earlier. The conversation moves gently from one memory to the next, never hurried, never forced. Picture yourself listening without feeling any need to speak. Sometimes, the greatest comfort comes simply from being present among familiar people. The Romans understood this well. Not every silence needed filling. Not every conversation required an important subject. The company itself was enough. As the evening slowly deepens, a cool breeze carries the scent of nearby gardens through the streets. Jasmine begins releasing its fragrance into the night air, mixing with the lingering aroma of freshly baked bread and herbs that escaped from family kitchens only a little while earlier. Somewhere nearby, a lyre begins playing. The melody is soft, gentle, almost thoughtful. The musician is not performing for applause. Perhaps he is simply ending his own day with music that brings him peace. Several neighbors pause to listen. Nobody gathers into a large crowd. Instead, people continue their evening walks while the quiet melody follows them through the narrow streets. Imagine walking toward one of Rome's smaller temples. The marble steps still hold a little warmth from the afternoon sunshine. Oil lamps flicker gently beside the entrance, their tiny flames dancing whenever the breeze passes by. Visitors come and go quietly. Some pause only for a few moments of reflection. Others remain longer, sitting peacefully beneath nearby columns. Whether seeking gratitude, comfort, or simply a moment of stillness, these places offered many Romans another gentle escape from the worries of everyday life. You continue your walk beyond the temple and soon reach a broad overlook where much of the city stretches before you. The rooftops glow softly beneath the moonlight. Smoke rises lazily from the last cooking fires. Here and there, tiny points of light shine from open windows where families continue talking before sleep. From this distance, Rome appears almost timeless. It is easy to forget that every home contains its own small joys and quiet concerns. A child learning new letters, a grandmother mending clothing, a father repairing a broken stool, a mother preparing tomorrow's bread. Each ordinary task adds another thread to the great tapestry of Roman life. Imagine sitting upon a low stone wall overlooking the sleeping city. The moon climbs steadily higher. A cool night bird calls from somewhere beyond the gardens. Far away, the gentle barking of a dog lasts only a few moments before silence returns. You close your eyes for just a moment. The sounds become even clearer. Flowing water, leaves whispering in the breeze, a distant cart crossing worn stone. Then, quiet. Not an empty silence, a peaceful one. The kind of silence that allows thoughts to settle naturally. The Romans did not always seek to escape these quiet moments. Often, they welcomed them. Perhaps they understood something that is easy to forget. A peaceful life does not need constant excitement. It needs meaningful routines. Kind neighbors, honest work, shared meals, stories remembered across generations, walks taken without hurry, gardens tended patiently, music played simply because someone wished to play. As the night grows deeper, one by one the remaining lamps are extinguished. Doors close softly. The streets become still. Above everything else stretches the same vast sky that watched over Rome centuries ago and still watches over the world today. The same constellations slowly wheel across the heavens. The same moon reflects its gentle light upon roofs, rivers, trees, and quiet roads. You realize that although centuries separate your world from theirs, many of the small comforts remain unchanged. People still enjoy talking with friends. They still find peace in gardens. They still treasure family stories. They still pause to watch a sunset or listen to birds welcoming a new morning. Perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. The Romans were not so different from us. Their ways of overcoming boredom were rarely grand. Instead, they discovered joy in paying close attention to everyday life. A warm loaf of bread shared at supper. A game played beneath the shade of a tree. A neighbor's friendly greeting, a child's curious question, a quiet evening beneath a sky filled with stars. These gentle moments, repeated day after day, slowly became a life well lived. And as you take one final peaceful look across the moonlit rooftops of ancient Rome, you carry with you the quiet lesson its ordinary people left behind. Happiness is often found not by searching for extraordinary adventures, but by noticing the quiet beauty already waiting in the simple rhythm of each passing day. Imagine that one final morning has arrived over ancient Rome. The eastern sky slowly brightens, and the first golden rays of sunlight reach the highest temples before gently flowing across tiled rooftops, quiet gardens, and familiar streets. The city awakens exactly as it has countless times before, not with sudden excitement, but with the peaceful rhythm that has carried generations through their ordinary days. You find yourself standing upon a gentle hill overlooking the city. Below you, smoke begins to rise from the first cooking fires of the morning. Bakers are already tending their ovens. Farmers guide carts through the city gates, their harvest fresh from the surrounding countryside. The steady song of fountains continues without pause, just as it did yesterday, and the day before that, and for years beyond memory. You have traveled quietly through this remarkable world, not through the triumphs of emperors, not through famous battles, but through the peaceful lives of ordinary Romans whose names have long since disappeared from history. And perhaps that has been the greatest journey of all. Imagine watching a young apprentice unlock the door to his master's workshop. Before any work begins, he sweeps yesterday's dust from the floor with careful strokes. Sunlight falls across wooden benches, chisels, hammers, and unfinished pieces waiting patiently to become something useful. Nearby, a baker places warm loaves upon a shelf. Across the street, a woman waters herbs growing beside her doorway. Children hurry toward their lessons with wax tablets tucked beneath their arms. An elderly neighbor pauses to greet everyone who passes. Nothing about the morning appears extraordinary, yet everything feels meaningful. The Romans rarely believed that happiness came from endless excitement. Instead, they trusted the quiet strength of routine. Every sunrise offered another opportunity to work honestly, to greet a neighbor kindly, to learn something new, to care for family, to appreciate beauty wherever it quietly appeared. As the morning slowly arrives, you walk once more through the marketplace. The same fruit seller smiles as she arranges ripe figs into neat baskets. The same potter examines a freshly fired bowl with patient eyes. The same shepherd leads his flock through familiar streets. Days repeat. Seasons repeat. Life repeats. Yet within these gentle repetitions, every person finds something slightly different to notice. A child has grown taller since last spring. A newly planted tree now casts welcome shade. The first grapes of the season have appeared. A familiar dog has welcomed another litter of playful puppies. The Romans understood that life was never truly identical. It changed slowly, almost quietly, one peaceful day at a time. Imagine leaving the city walls one final time and following the road toward the countryside. The olive groves shimmer beneath the breeze. Vineyards stretch across gentle hills. Wildflowers color the edges of the road. Bees drift lazily among blossoms, while swallows circle high above the fields. An old farmer pauses from his work to admire the sky. He has probably seen thousands of mornings like this. Still, he smiles. Not because today is unusual, because today is enough. You continue walking until you reach a small stream where clear water flows over smooth stones. You sit beneath a broad tree whose branches have offered shade to travelers for generations. The only sounds are moving water, birdsong, and leaves whispering softly in the breeze. For a while, you simply listen. The Romans knew places like this well. Whenever city life became busy or burdensome, the countryside reminded them that peace required very little. Fresh air, running water, honest work, good company, time to think. Time to rest. Time simply to be. As afternoon slowly passes into evening, you return once again to Rome. Families prepare supper. The scent of bread, herbs, lentils, and roasting vegetables drifts through open windows. Children finish their games reluctantly before being called indoors. Neighbors carry stools outside their homes, ready for another evening of gentle conversation. An elderly grandmother begins telling a familiar story. The children already know how it ends. They ask to hear it anyway. The storyteller smiles. Some stories become more comforting each time they are told. Oil lamps begin glowing throughout the city. Their warm light spills gently onto stone streets, where neighbors wish one another peaceful evenings before returning home. Some pause beside fountains. Others linger beneath the stars. A musician quietly plays a final melody upon his lyre. Its notes drift softly through the cooling air before disappearing into the night. Above the city stretches a sky filled with countless stars. The same stars watched over Julius Caesar. The same stars guided merchants crossing the Mediterranean. The same stars shone above farmers gathering olives and children chasing one another through quiet courtyards. Tonight, they shine above you as well. Thousands of years have passed. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have changed. Roads have disappeared beneath modern cities. Yet many of the simple pleasures that filled Roman lives remain wonderfully familiar. A shared meal, a trusted friend, a peaceful walk, a blooming garden, the comfort of reading, the joy of learning, the laughter of children, the faithful companionship of a dog resting at its owner's feet, the satisfaction of creating something with patient hands, the quiet beauty of watching sunrise or sunset without feeling the need to hurry away. Perhaps this is the answer you have been seeking from the beginning. How did ancient Romans really beat boredom? Not with constant spectacles, not with endless celebrations, not even with the famous arenas that history remembers so well. Most of the time, they overcame boredom exactly as ordinary people often do today, by belonging to a community, by caring for family, by talking with neighbors, by walking through familiar streets, by tending gardens, by reading thoughtful words, by learning useful skills, by playing games with friends, by listening to music, by sharing stories, by noticing the changing seasons, and by finding quiet happiness in the countless ordinary moments that gently stitched one day to the next. History often celebrates kings, generals, and monuments. Yet the true heart of Rome lived elsewhere. It lived in the baker who rose before dawn every morning, in the teacher patiently guiding a child's first letters, in the gardener waiting for spring blossoms, in the grandmother whose stories carried memories across generations, in the craftsman smoothing the final edge of a bowl, in the neighbors who greeted one another with familiar smiles day after day. These people built no great empires. Yet together, they built something equally remarkable, a way of life. One that reminds us, even now, that peace is often found not by chasing extraordinary moments, but by fully embracing ordinary ones. As the night grows deeper, the last conversations slowly fade. Doors close gently. Oil lamps are extinguished one by one. The fountains continue their endless song beneath the moonlight. A cool breeze drifts through silent streets that have witnessed countless generations before slipping quietly into another peaceful night. And now, as your own journey through ancient Rome gently comes to an end, you leave the eternal city, carrying one final, comforting thought. No matter how many centuries separate us from those ordinary Romans, the small things that brought warmth to their hearts still have the power to bring warmth to ours. So let the city rest beneath its blanket of stars. Let the fountains continue flowing through the quiet darkness. Let the gardens wait patiently for another sunrise. And as Rome slowly falls asleep once more, may you drift peacefully with it, carrying the gentle rhythm of its ordinary days into your own quiet dreams.